Okay, so today's lesson is going to be about multiplying fractions and mixed numbers. So let's just take a look about what we've done so far. We've simplified fractions. We've changed them from mixed numbers to improper fractions. We've made equivalent fractions. We've added and subtraction, added fractions. We've checked to see which one is greater than. So now, again, we're going into multiplying. And one of the key words that we want to talk about is this word of. So whenever you hear of, you should automatically think multiply. So if I say I'm going to take half of your allowance, I'm going to multiply 1/2 times 10, whatever it is. You want to throw in another example?
Of means multiply.
Yeah, just of means multiply. So here's we kind of just decided that most of the problems for multiplying fractions have these same steps. So go ahead and just write these down, pause the slide, and just keep referring back to them when we go over the examples. So multiplying fractions. You're going to love this one because you don't have to worry about common denominator or anything like that. All you need to figure out is the product, meaning the answer to a multiplication, of two or more fractions is the product of the numerator, which is the guy on top, divided by the product of the denominator. So here's what that would look like. So 4 and 3 are my numerators, so it's 4 times 3 divided by 9 times 5. So 4 times 3 is 12. 9 times 5 is 45. So some of you might have already noticed that there is a common factor that I could have divided out earlier, and that one is 3. So I'm going to go ahead and divide the top by 3 and the bottom by 3 to simplify, put the fraction in simplest form. So 12 divided by 3 is 4. 45 divided by 3 is 15. So if I was to go through my dugout, my 2, 3, 5, 7, and 11, and then a student said her teacher told her 2 plus 3 is 5. So that helps you remember 2 plus 3 is 5, 2, 3, 5. And then 7, 11, because we can all remember that that's the store down at the end of the street. So this is in simplest form because 2 can't go into them, 3 can't go into both of them, 5 can't, 7 or 11. So let's just go ahead and finish this off. That is your final answer. So let's go ahead and do a few more examples. And because you're in 7th grade, guess what you get? A little negative sign. So the first thing we want to look at is remember our negative integer rules when we're multiplying. So I have 1 negative times 1 positive. So if we used our integer man, that means that it would be a negative. So I'm just going to kind of put that negative off to the side. So then again, I'm multiplying the numerators over my denominator. So here's how it would look like. So just put the negative off to the side. It's going to be 3 times 2 over 5 times 7. So I'm going to go ahead and multiply across. I'm going to carry that negative again. 3 times 2 is 6. 5 times 7 is 35. And Miss Peterson, is there anything else I can cancel off from there?
Look at the bench.
All right, so 2, nope, can't go into both. 3, excuse me, can't go into both. 5 can't, 7, I think we're done. Okay, so again, it's going to be a negative answer, negative 6 over 35, or you could say negative 6 35ths. Haha. Again, you're in 7th grade now, so you're going to be dealing with these negative fractions. It's the same rules as our integer. So a negative times a negative would give us a positive. And if you wanted to draw out the integer man, you can cover up his eyes and you're going to be left with a positive. So I'll just put a little plus sign there. You don't have to, but you can. So then it's going to be 2 times 2 over 5 times 3. 2 times 2 is 4 over 15. Interesting that it's the same as that one. I think it's just a coincidence. Okay, and then we're done. So notice this one up here is already simplified, so there's nothing I can simplify here. Did I do that right?
Yep.
Okay. So moving on, just a couple of other examples. And again, remember the most important thing is, because now that you're in 7th grade, it's not your normal, it's your normal multiplication, but you have to watch out for the negative signs. So one of the things that we talk about is this cross canceling, which you're basically just canceling out before you multiply. So what we do is we look to see what is in common in any of these factors. So what's uncommon on the top, that's uncommon on the bottom. And then what's for this one, so I don't know, I kind of just look around. So you have to compare your top and your bottom. So I see a 5 here, and I see that there's going to be a 5 here because 2 times 5 is 10. I also know that 9 is 3 times 3, and I know that 12 is 3 times 4. So I'm going to go ahead and first divide out from the top and the bottom of 5. And Miss Peterson, do you do this here? Would you multiply, show it off to the top? Because this is what I usually would do. I would put 5 times 9, just so it's over like one big fraction bar, 12 times 10. I know it's the same thing, but does that look okay?
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm going to go ahead and divide out the 5. 5 divided by 5 is 1. That's my 1. 10 divided by 5 is 2. So I'm just going to leave that right there. And then I know this 3 and the 12, like we talked about, has a common denominator of, no, not a common denominator, a common factor of 3. So 9 divided by 3 is 3. 12 divided by 3 is 4. So here are the numbers that I'm left with. 1 times 3 is 3. 4 times 2 is 8. And I know that that's already in my simplest form because I went ahead and canceled out before I even multiplied. So that might be a good thing to do, especially when the fractions are a little bit bigger. Look for factors that are in common from the numerator and your denominator. Okay, so now we have our favorite mixed numbers, whole number, fraction. And so again, you can make your mad face, whatever it is that you use to remember how to change a mixed number to a fraction. So I'm going to go ahead and just make my mad face. And again, the mad stands for multiply, add over your denominator. So here's my multiplication, here's my addition. I'm just going to go ahead and draw this, and then I'll rewrite it off to the side. So 5 times 1 is 5. 5 plus 2 is 7. So it's going to be 7 over my denominator of 5. And then I multiply. 2 times 3 is 6. 6 plus 1 is 7. 7 over my denominator of 2. So I'm looking again, kind of like what we did up here, cross canceling. There's nothing that I can see right now that's in common from the top and the bottom. The other clue is that these are all prime numbers. So, you know, there's nothing to factor out. I take that back. There could be a prime number on the bottom, that like a 7. You could factor out. So multiply straight across. 7 times 7 is 49. 5 times 2 is 10. Now, improper fraction, we want to change that back to a mixed number. So that's the top dog in the house. So 49 divided by 10. 10 goes into 49 4 times. And then there's going to be 9 left over. So it's going to be 4 and 9 tenths. Okay, so you should be able to reference the problems that you have in your textbook, look to see the ones that are similar to the examples that we just did, follow your steps, and Mrs. Peterson is going to show some additional examples.
Okay, so multiplying a whole number and a fraction. Now remember that I need it to be 2 fractions for my multiplication. So if I have 4 times 2/5, I'm going to rewrite that as 4. How can I make that as a fraction? Remember that it's 4 over 1. And now it's 4 over 1 times 2 over 5. Same process. It's 4 times 2 over 1 times 5. And I really like to cross cancel before I multiply, so I'll always do that if I have the chance. But again, going back to 1 and 5, 4 and 2, they don't have anything in common. So 4 times 2 is 8. 1 times 5 is 5. So 8/5, oh, that's an improper fraction. I need to fix it. 5 goes into 8 one time. Subtract, we get 3. We have 1 whole and 3/5 left over. Remember, this is what our answer should look like. It should be a mixed number, not an improper fraction. Okay, so evaluating an expression, remember that we have our A and our B. Okay, and we're now given values for A and B. And let me go ahead and clear that up a little bit. That's all I'm doing. Okay, so we have A times B. Remember that this is A, so I'm going to plug it in for A. And this is B. So giving it our hug, we've got 5/8 times -7/6. Remember, we're putting it in hug because we want to remember that this means to multiply. So same process. We've got 5 times, I'm going to write -7 over 8 times 6. I'm looking again, and I'd really rather this be written differently, but as is, they have nothing in common again. So I've got to just multiply out. 5 times -7 is -35. And 8 times 6 is 48. And so it's -35 over 48. It can't be simplified. Just making sure that it doesn't matter that this negative sign looks kind of more like it's with the 35. As long as there's a negative sign, it attaches to the whole thing. And here is my answer. So powers and fractions. Now these can kind of be a pain, but we just have to take our time and remember the steps for it. So first of all, we've been told that when we have a mixed number, we want to make it into an improper fraction so that we can solve. So let's go up here. We multiply. We add. So we've got 4 times 1 plus 1, which should equal 5/4. So I'm just going to take my 5/4. There we go. 5/4. And I'm going to put it to the second power. Okay, so remember this means 5/4 times 5/4. Right? The second power means that it's 2 of this. Okay, so that gives me 5 times 5 over 4 times 4. And again, I have nothing in common on top or on bottom. So 5 times 5 is 25. 4 times 4 is 16. Okay. 16 goes into 25. Remember using top dog in the house. 16 goes into 25 once. I'm going to subtract. I have 9 left over. And my answer equals 1 and 9 parts left in my pie with 16 pieces. And there's my final answer. So again, remember, we first make it into an improper fraction and we multiply it by itself. So things to remember, okay, these are all really important things we want you to include in your notes. Divide out common factors, right? We call that simplifying. Make sure that if you have two numbers, two fractions, they're both less than 1. Okay, the product also has to be less than 1. If you're multiplying two fractions, it can't be greater than 1. Okay, this is another big one. Make sure we remember any number can be written as itself over 1. Okay, easy to make it into a fraction. And remember, we can switch back and forth from a mixed number to an improper fraction. Okay, let's start practicing.